start thinking about it now so that you can practice. Hopefully, your design things that we talked about in the past couple weeks in this class would relate to this software. So let's just do our overview like we were doing last class of Xcode here. So if you remember from last class, I started Xcode and we started talking about the interface and how to design an interface. Again, Playground is a way that you can test programming, and we'll be doing a lot of Playground at the beginning of the class just to practice programming. And then, but to make a project, you use the Xcode project here. And if you remember from last class, I kind of talked about the different options that you have here, where you can make a single view, game view, master detail, page view, or a tabbed application. Again, the tabbed application is a very common way of making an app on your phone. It's a lot of the apps that you have on your phone are actually tabbed, where it has a tab, like your email, right? If you go to any of your email on your phone, and if you just look at it, some of them are tabbed. On this email is not tabbed. How about your?
It has a little bottom.
Yeah,
icon bar that doesn't
your music is a tabbed one, right? So if you turn on iTunes,
in the bookstore.
right? When it says tabbed application, it'd be like your music, where you have see the icons down here. So when you use the tabbed application, you don't have to worry about the tab. It's always going to be there. I know we talked about last class, maybe some problem hiding it, right? I don't know how to do that, but in general, you know, if you look at your music icon, it's going to be down there. So, and you can make your own icons for the tabbed application at the bottom. So we can try that if you want. If you just click on it and then say next, of course it'll give you. It'll ask you a question. You know, what do you want to name it? I'm going to call it tabbed example. And of course, what are you designing for? Universal is if you're designing for both iPad as well as iPhone, right? Where in desktop you can do or just iPhone or iPad and make them separate. And a lot of, actually, I think I explained to you last class that a lot of people do separate ones because just the layout issues of having to deal with the phone compared to the especially with the iPad Pro now, that's such a big screen, trying to get something to work great on an iPhone and a giant iPad. So you can actually choose one or the other, and then when you're at the App Store, you can give them the choice, right? Now, of course, it's extra work for you, but in general, though, trying to make a layout that works both is very difficult. I struggle with it every day, trying to make a layout look good in both the phone as well as the pad. So, the universal's different. We'll learn how to do it. It's just a little bit difficult. That's all I'm trying to say. And then, of course, you give it a name. Remember last class we talked about Git and what GitHub was? You don't have to have it. By default, it's checked. You don't have to do that. You can turn that off. And then just hit create. And you get now, if you remember from last class, this is the basic interface of the Xcode software. You have your kind of navigational options over here. This is the first window. It kind of asks you what you're building for, if you remember from last class. Again, we still have iPhone here. What version are you targeting? Which is kind of a problem sometimes, especially if you have an older version and you try and open it up in a newer version. This tends to give you an error message here.
You said it's better to program kind of for an older version rather than the latest, just because.
Yeah, I'm going to try and get the latest version on these computers. I already sent an email out today to make sure that we can try and get the latest version on all these computers. The biggest problem we have is they image these computers with El Capitan, and of course the latest is High Sierra or Sierra, and I don't know if they're willing to do that. So I don't know. We might struggle with that. We'll figure that out. But, we'll learn how to adjust this. All I'm just pointing it out here to you today is that sometimes you need to target an older version here. And I've seen that before, and that's at the very beginning here. Well, it's not the actual phone itself. You're targeting the version of the software, right? So this is going back in time to the version. The latest version is 11.
So you'll notice it's only 10.2 here in this version because we don't have the latest operating system is the problem. You can only put the latest version on the latest operating system. I can't take Swift 4 and Xcode, the latest Xcode, and put it on these computers because it doesn't have the latest operating
What
system.
if I wanted to make some old legacy software for my old iPod Touch, which can't update with the latest version of iOS, but if I could get the file on there and it would run it as an app, could I do that with, I don't know necessarily Xcode, but maybe another piece of software to make old legacy software to create my iPod Touch? Is
Oh
something
my
useful
God,
yet?
yeah, I
Or
don't know.
something on there?
I don't know. I don't know about iPod Touch.
Okay.
Okay, and then I think if you remember from last class, there's a capabilities box right here, and this capabilities box is what you want to include into your programming. You'll notice if you want Siri to be in your app, you can turn it on. Well, we got to add an account for that, whatever. We'll figure that out later. If you want, I think that I did the example I was showing is to add a map. You can add a map. And then you, in the map kit, you can put a map very easily into your app. It's only a few lines of code. I think first thing you need to do is turn it on here, and then you just need to call the map kit. You see where it says map kit right here? You say, map kit, and then you can take advantage of the map. So if you know what capabilities you're going to build into your app, you can come here and turn them on. Do you need audio? Enter app audio, right? Probably turn that on. Are you using key sharing? That's the way to share your password around. App groups, data protection, HomeKit, health kit, wireless accessories. So there's some.
HomeKit for smart devices?
What's that?
HomeKit, is that kind of like interacting with?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. What does enable HomeKit allows you to app to interact with HomeKit accessories and create home configurations. So I guess if you have something that
Smart technology now.
yeah. I mean, of course, Google uses Nest, right? So if you get a Nest device, you're probably going to... But I can control my Nest device on my iPad, right? So, they do make apps for that. So that was under there, and then there's some info, and I did talk about last class about how you might need to adjust some of these settings as well. I had to, at least in my previous apps I've made, if I was connecting to the internet, I actually had to come over here and turn it on and say, by default, it won't let you connect to a web page in your app unless you allow it, and that's I guess a security reason. And I had to go in here and turn something on. I can't remember. I'll have to get out my hand. So I was making a national park app. I think I was explaining. I had all the students in the class make a national park app, but the problem was we couldn't connect to the national park website unless we came into this window under info here and turn on. I can't remember. There was a security option in here that we need to turn on. I'll figure that out when we get.
It'll probably show you from an unknown developer you have to approve, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, because Apple have a strict regulation within the app.
Yeah. So when we were doing a national park one, and so the ones that we did in class last year was we did a national park app, we did a music app, we did a trivia app, and we did a animation app. And I'm sure we'll do more this semester, but those are the ones I got to work in the last class.
Have you heard of that new trivia app that's kind of like a live trivia show, I guess, on the iPad? You can win surprises and everything, or iPhone, and you log in live, kind of like how they had on Xbox. They had it was a trivia show that you can log in online and win stuff through your app.
No, I haven't tried it yet, but I do like to win stuff, though.
Okay, I'll find out.
We all love to win stuff. So you can turn that on. I don't know if I'll get to a map today. I'm going to turn it off for right now. I guess I can't turn it off. I guess once I turn it on, I can't turn it off. So, and then of course over here, let's just briefly talk. You'll notice that you have different ways of viewing the data over here. It's not going to tell you much right now. Mostly when you run your app, you'll need to deal with some stuff over here. But at this point, this is the tabbed menu right here, and you'll notice this is where you store all your data is over here. And so again, you have 2 Swift files. You got 3 Swift files now, and I guess it's because we have so the app delegate Swift is the main app, but you really don't program in here. Okay, I don't really program in here, where you program is mostly in the views. I think last class we were talking about the view and the view controller. And so there's two of them here. One is probably running the reason why there's two view controllers is probably one is the tabbed menu and the other one is for the main view.
Oh, did you go into?
And so, you know, some programming for like the icons would go in here, and then the other, I'm not sure which one is which. I would have to click on the storyboard, and we'll see the menu. Remember, when we do a storyboard, it's a visual way of looking at your app. And you'll notice, let me zoom out a little bit here, and you'll see that it has two views already. So it's assuming that you have one view, and when the person hits the button, it goes to one view, and they hit this one, it goes to the second view, right? Do you remember last class when I was making screens in a single application? So this is already set up to have two, and then you can actually add another one down here. You know, whatever tabs you can make in there. There was an app one time I was trying to make that actually had more tabs than you could fit in there, and we were thinking about having it scroll sideways, but then the people I was working with, we just said, so yeah, here was a challenge we came up one time, and I was working with the Zircon people on their leak alert, the one product I have that connects to your email and sends you an email alert when you got leaked. We were trying to make options down here, and we actually had more than what could, you know, there's like 5 you fit in there, you know, nicely, and anything more than, you know, it doesn't really fit nicely. So we were thinking, oh, maybe we could have it scroll, and it was like, no. So we just tried to combine things together just to have a few, and then we actually got rid of the tabs. We didn't want to go there.
Could you have those open up into folders or lists? So if you hit one, it'll show a selection of icons?
I haven't tried that yet, but yeah, I know what you're saying.
Okay.
Kind of like a burger menu or something, right?
Kind of, but like,
Mhm.
yeah, I guess on the fly burger menu.
So again, you know, this is the tab view, and it already has some programming for the buttons. It looks like somehow, if I could get in there, I don't know how to control that tabbed menu. That one goes there, that one goes there. We can test it. Let's test and see what it does. So remember, with this program, you can always go and test. And they use a simulator, and that simulator works just like your phone. In fact, you can go to the App Store from your computer running the simulator here. So if I run the simulator here, and it's going to run the tabbed menu here, it'll run the simulator, and it's still running. Is it running? There you go. And you'll notice that if I click on the view, it's got first view, second view, first view, second view, first view, second view. So you wouldn't put anything in here. This would be the first view. And so you only have 2 screens in this app right now. So right now the buttons are jumping between here and here and here and there. And then so that's a simulator. So if I was going to design a screen up here, let's just work on that so we can practice our features that we talked about last class. So again, just like you would have in Sketch or you would have in Photoshop if you're using the iOS pre-made art, you have pre-made art over here. Again, we talked about the view controller. That's kind of the window that you have. And then you have different ways of controlling. The navigation controller can help you. It's kind of like a back menu when you're working with almost like breadcrumbs, I would say. Remember, like you can think of this as almost like breadcrumbs, I believe, where you notice when you're going through a website and it keeps track of which page you were on, and then it puts the words as you were going, right? And they call that breadcrumbs in web design, right? Well, you can do the same thing here where it can keep track and control that manages navigation through a hierarchical view. I think that's what that one does.
So when would you take advantage of that?
If they're going deep, you know, it can keep track of where they're at to get back out, right?
Would it just be like one step at a time, or would it be an immediate all the way back?
I think you could jump to whatever if it keeps track. I believe that's that.
Okay.
So there's a whole bunch of views and doing split views and things like that. But the most of what you would put on there would be like labels, would be any kind of text you put on there. Like right now there's a label right there, and you'll notice it has the remember the coordinates I was talking about last class. So I can delete that, and I can delete this. I'm going to remove this stuff, and then I'm going to make a simple layout. First thing I'm going to do is change the background color. So if you select your screen, I believe you could go over here to the options. I don't know. This is a sub menu with the thing. I think I would have to change the background color on here. Because this is a tab menu.
Go to the little draw arrow, or one over, right? Up.
This one?
In the middle. There you go. That, and then,
No, I started with a tabbed menu. That's why.
well, I'm on tab menu too, and I just selected the screen. Yeah, the screen selected. The one that you want to edit. Oh, why is all that? There.
There we go. Okay, so here's the background color. And so you can choose a solid color. You can have, or you hit other, and of course you can have all the colors. Notice that the colors I was using last class are still here. Do you remember these colors I was using? So it keeps track of the ones you just recently used. You can hit other, and you can choose your own color if you want. Ooh, that's kind of nice. I like that. I'm going to exaggerate a little bit there. So you can have a background color to your app. Again, by doing that. To put text on your screen, you use a label. I'm going to put my label on there. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. And just like you can, you just put text. So any text you put on your screen. And then for your text, you can move it around and position where you want it. Notice when I bring it towards the top, it actually has a, notice that when I bring it up towards the top, it actually has this blue line, because this is where the top navigation is. Now you can put things above there if you want, but it's going to be covered by your cell phone thing and things like that. The new version of Xcode actually has a separation between this bar up here where the battery and the cell phone is and the bottom part. So this version doesn't have that. They give you a little hint of, oh look, that's where it's going to be. But in the new version of Xcode, it's differentiated, and so that you can have what they call the safe area. They call it safe area, so that you don't put anything above where the battery and the cell phone things are. Now, if I wanted to have this on my screen, I need to tell it where my coordinates are. And if I come down here to where the down here, this is how you do what's called auto layout. And what auto layout does is it allows you to align things to the screen, and then you have constraints. You have two things that you're dealing with: the alignment and constraints. The alignment tells it kind of where it's at in the screen, and the constraints tells it how to interact, how big it is. I think I tried to explain it to you last class. If I was going to take this and put it on a different screen, it might need to get a little bigger for the text because the screen has a little higher resolution. And the constraints would do that. The coordinates tells, oh, you can't see that, can you?
I know what's wrong.
This is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
These little buttons down here. This one is for where the location of it is on the screen, and this is for the placement.
Okay.
So that's going to take some practice. The book has some examples of that, and it's pretty good. The book examples are good. Let me move this screen a little bit so that I can. There we go. Can you see it now? Now here, this is what I'm talking about. So again, to align this to the screen, you use this. First thing you want to do is where is it going to be horizontally and where is it going to be vertically. So horizontally, I want it to stay where it's at, so I can say use current canvas value, which is 0 at this point because it's right in the center, right? But for vertical, it depends on where it's at. I'm not sure exactly where it's at. It's not at 0 because that would be in the middle of the screen. And if you do hit constraints, it's going to give you, it's not necessarily an error message, but it's going to say, hey, you're not in the zero, you're not in the middle. Because watch, I just, if I put 0, 0 here and I hit constraints, watch what's going to happen. It's going to give me this yellow or orange, whatever you want to call it. And you'll notice it has a little box in the middle here. And it's saying, hey, if you run this app right now, the text is going to go down here. Because it's going to force it to be there. Even though visually in your brain you see it up here, when you run the app, it's going to run it down here.
So every
So-
piece of anything that you essentially, any graphic, any image,
Yeah.
any icon, you're essentially got to manually put in where.
No, but you can group them together. I think last class, you remember I said you can group things together?
Okay.
That's where this one is right here. These are called stacks right here. Stack view. So we could have a photo, let's say a photo and the text, and have that in a group, and then position that and give that constraints as a team. And most stuff we're going to do that.
Okay.
We'll do a group. But I'm just trying to give you concepts here as far as the placement. So you'll probably have mostly of a group. So let me undo that. You can undo in this program. And so if I wanted to keep this up here, this option up here, I would then probably, like I said, horizontal center. But for the vertical, I'm going to say use current value right here. And that'll measure where it's at. And so this is negative 295 because it's going from the middle up. And if I hit add constraints, you'll notice they're all blue now. When you see all blue, that's good. Red is bad. Yellow, red says there's a problem or a conflict. Yellow says there's a positioning issue. Red is bad, and so on. In addition to putting that on there, I might put a button on there as well. I'm going to put a button underneath there. And let's say go to the map. I don't know if I can figure out. Ooh, look at it dancing there. So I can put that in there if I want. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. And then I'm going to give it some background color. And so for a button, you can do basic things like give it a background color. You can change the text color if you want. So I might want to go with a light text, make it a little bit bigger, and then maybe go and put a background. If you want a solid background, you can also put a picture in the background as well. So let's say I wanted this to be an image in my button. Right now, I could just give it a background color if I want. So let's say, ooh, we got that beautiful red there, or we just give it black. You know, oh, there's a button right there, right? In addition, you can actually put a picture in there. So let me get a picture. So you know, navigation, just like we did inside of Photoshop, right? You can take images and put them into your, you know, that's why we did that for our examples in class, right? Remember in class we were making navigation with images behind the text. Do you remember doing that? So let's say this was, we're doing national parks. So I can, let me find some pictures here. Images, and so I can take an image like this and I could use it as a button. The biggest challenge you're going to run into, of course, is how to take an image like this and squish it into the button. The best thing to do is to have the correct ratio. So if I was going to copy this and I want to use this as a background for a button, I would use Photoshop. I wouldn't put it directly into Xcode. Xcode tends to try and squish a picture to fit the box. It doesn't do a really good job of formatting your images to fit in a box. It doesn't do a really good job. The best thing that I would do as far as if I am going to make an app is try and get the images to be the right size. So if I am here and I'm using this, if I select this right now, you should be able to find the dimensions of this in the info. Let me see if I know the dimensions. I'd have to measure that. Or here, let's just take a screen grab. I'm gonna cheat, and I'm gonna take a screen grab of that and open that up. Open it up in Photoshop. Here it is. And copy that, paste it. And then I can scale that. The most important thing is that you stay in the ratio. That's the thing. It's not necessarily. So if I have something like that, then I can move it around and then crop to that. Oh, I can't crop to that position. There we go. Crop. And then remove this. Layers. Then I think last class I explained if you want to use images inside of Xcode, you really the best and probably the most compatible format is going to be PNG. So if I was going to use this, I would save this as a PNG. Photoshop's not going to work. JPEG works, but I've seen problems. I've had problems with JPEGs. I think it has to do with the compressing. Using PNG tends to work the best, and you can bring in things with the opacity, right? You can have transparencies in PNGs. So this could be my background to my button in this example. And hold on. Yes? Okay, I'm in class. Ciao. Sorry, it was my wife. But she was broken down. If it's your wife, you can answer the phone.
She loves cookies.
Okay, so I want to bring this image into Xcode and apply it to this beautiful button. Remember the button right here? Apply it to this button. So to bring that images into the program, you store them in assets. I think last class I was explaining to you about assets and how you can store assets. Notice there's already 2 assets in here. What do you think they're for? The tabbed icons, right? And I can actually change these icons to be whatever icon I want. I can go and steal them from what was it called? The Noun project, and put them in there, right? So maybe the button is going to be a map, right? I have a map button. I can go right now to the Noun project. And I can go and what we're doing map, right? And I can take one of these icons that I have here. Oh, did they put a line in there? Okay, let's say I wanted this one. I could copy that by using the what am I trying to do here? The screen capture. And when you make an icon for a tabbed menu, because remember we were using a tabbed menu, it's best to be square. So that wasn't very square, was it? Let me see if I can make this square. Is it, if that's a word, square? There we go. More square. More square. There we go. In addition, it's best to be, if you're doing a tabbed menu, to have the icon be black and white. If you ever looked at a tabbed menu on your phone, again, look at the music one for a moment. If you look at the music one for a moment, let's look at it. The icons are not, they're not all colorful and beautiful. If you look at down there, they're solid. So you don't have the option to put, they're solid. There's a highlight color, right? You can see the red there, right? But in general, you're going to put it in as black and white, and then the app will color it a solid one at the bottom. So keep that in mind. If you're doing a tab menu, it's all. Now, if you're making a menu like this and you're using graphics like the button that I'm using, you can put a picture in there like I'm going to do, and adjust all kinds of things. But for the tabbed menu, it needs to be like a solid black and white like this. So let's bring that in as well. So we have 2 things. We need to bring in our picture and our new icon. Again, under Assets option right here, I can right-click and say New. Now, again, if you're doing multiple sizes, I think you're targeting the phone, and you should bring in a set. See where it says New Image Set? And again, if you use the New Image Set, it'll give you options for 1x, 2x, and 3x. Do you remember saving those out like I talked about? But if I didn't do that because I only have one for each. I'm just going to go down and say where it says import right there. Import. And then I can import my assets that I just brought in. Again, I have my background for my button. Beautiful background. And then I can bring in my what's the second one? This one's probably the second one. So I can have my icon now for my my map. So even if you don't use the image set, of course, with 1x, 2x, 3, it's still going to work. It's just the resolution of the higher resolution ones might be a little blurry and not as sharp. I think the reason why you would do the 1x, 2x, 3x is so that it's sharp on all the screens. And once you do it and use that, you don't have to think about it. The program, because I don't have all three right now, so I'm not demonstrating that right now, but if you do the image set, all you have to do is put one on, and the app will actually put the other ones on there automatically. You never have to think about it again. You know, it's not like in web design where you'd have to do a test and say, oh, if they're on this screen, serve this image, or this screen, serve that image. It'll automatically put the correct one depending upon the device that you use. So you don't have to think about, you know, devices and changing it. It does it automatically. So I'm going to go back to my storyboard here, and then I'm going to go, if I can remember. Let me first change my icon down here, the first icon here, and I got to think about how to change that. It's been a while since I've used a tabbed menu. I'm going to put my icon in there. I might have to do it in the view controller. View controller. No, not in there. I have to think about how to change that. I can't remember. I know there's a way to change this graphic. I've made tabbed with my own icons. I can't remember how to do it right now. Let's move back to the button over here. So again, we can have a button here, and I can put an image in here. So if I select my button, you'll notice again with the little icon right here, you'll see that it's an attribute. So the attribute to my button is here. You'll notice there's also an image option right here. See where it says image, as well as background image. What's the difference? Well, it's kind of like in web design where you either put the image on the screen using the image source, or you can actually put an image in a button on a website as the background, right, using CSS, right? So think about the concept of that, where you have a background image or an image. It's kind of the same concept there. So if I choose background, I can just choose my background right there, and I have my nice national park background there. In addition, you can change the font or the text because that's not going to show up. I'm going to go back to black for that. In addition, you can tell where you want the text to be inside of here. So if you click on your button, you can tell, you can tell it, do I want the text to be, where is it? In the corner over here, or on the left side, or in the center, and then top. So you have different options of the placement. As far as away from the edge, I haven't really thought about that. I just kind of placed it in there. So if you want, you can actually adjust where the placement of the text is inside there. You can give your text a background color by selecting your text and going to, there is a drop shadow option, and I need to think about where it's at. Shadow color, it's right here. So we can add a shadow color and then a position of where it's at. So I'm going to go all out and put a red behind there. You don't really see it because I haven't told it to be away. There's a way that you need to adjust where the shadow is by down, just give me a second. I was just doing this the other day, where you can adjust the shadow position. Offset shadow is this one. So we can adjust Oosh, that doesn't look very good. Let me zoom in a little bit here. And so I haven't, I thought you could have a shadow that was blurry, like a nice drop shadow like you would have in Photoshop. I think there's a way, but you have to program it that way. I by default doing this, I haven't really found. And so let me go with a negative. Let me go positive, so it's the other way. And so, that is pretty simple. You got your little drop shadow there, but I think there's a way to make it blurry as well.
Can you add a tint to the background? Can you add a tint to the background?
A what to the background?
A tint.
A tint to the background. I don't know. Let me think about that. You can add an opacity to it, so it blends with the background. You can add a stroke to it, so it has a line around the outside. I'm not seeing it right now. I would have to, but you do have different options for it. I know there's a way to add a stroke. I have to think about it. Okay, so I have one button that goes to map, and right now, if I wanted to program this to have another screen that shows a map, well, actually, we're using a tab menu, aren't we? So, I guess I could have it go to a new screen if I wanted it to. And then here's where I put my icon, right here. And then we want to do image, and we want this one. No, that's not what I want. Oh, maybe because of the size. Yeah, because the size has to be a specific size. That's why if I chose image for the bar, select image for the bar. So here's the pre-made ones in there. More button. You got your favorite button. You have your feature button. You have your top rated button. You have recent buttons. You got history button, and so on. But you can also put an image in there, but I think the problem with the image is it's too big. It would have to be a specific size. My image is not working. I have to think about that as well. How to get the tabbed. There's a specific way of doing it there.
How do you add
You can make custom icons down here is what I'm saying.
how do you add images to your asset folder again?
If you're doing assets, you got this asset pop-up window right here. You right-click and say import image right there. So, yeah, the screen grab is too big. It needs to be tiny, and it needs to be in a specific size, black and white. It is PNG. I think it's just too big. The problem with that. Okay, so you get the idea that a tabbed menu is basically, this is the view controller. We would call these subviews, each one of these, second view, first view. They would be referred to as subviews. So if I test my app now, it's basically going to go between it'll basically go between this screen and this screen, this screen and this screen. Notice how I didn't give my button here any constraints, and look what it's doing. It's covering my title. Do you see that? Because I never told it how far away to be from the title. So one of the, again, probably the hardest thing to get used to inside of Xcode is positioning. So if I was going to position this, again, I would probably do the same things I did with the button. I would say horizontal, center, and then vertical, I would say use current location. Remember we did that for the button. It tells it where it's at in space. And then the next thing I would do is then give it some constraints. those constraints, what it's telling you right now is where it's located within the space. It's 21 pixels down from the top. It's fine. And so I'm going to tell it to be in this space by just hitting these red lines here. And what it's doing is it's going to place the button in the space there. Sometimes you can specify width and height. In doing so, then, if you, let's say you wanted this button to go all the way across the screen from one edge to the other, right? From basically going from this edge all the way to the edge of the screen, from this edge all the way to the edge of the screen. I can come down here where the width is, and I can put a I put 0 over here, 0 there, not width here. I put a 0 here, I'm going to put a 0 there. And even though visually I'm seeing the button, it's not going all the way to the edge. If you put these constraints in there, it'll scale it to fit to the end. And notice if I look in here, remember the little orange ones that we saw with position before? Now I'm seeing some orange ones now, and what it's telling me is that, hey, it's going to scale it out. And notice that 0 doesn't go all the way to the edge. And the reason why 0 doesn't go all the way to the edge in this program is just like on a web page, right? What do you have around the edge of a web page? Margins, right? This has margins as well. So even though I told this button to be 0, 0 all the way inside here, it's not going to the edge. Now you can force it to go to the edge. I'll have to think about that. I've done that before. There is a way to force it to the edge. I'll need to think about it. Yeah. So right now, visually, it doesn't look like it's going to the edge. But if I go and test this, it in runtime, the button will be all the way to the 0, 0 that I told it in the constraints. So that's when you see those little orange things in there, it's actually telling you, hey, I'm still covering my text. How did my text get covered? No. But you can see how it goes further than what you see here. It's definitely scaling it. I kind of messed up. Oh, did I give the title any constraints? I didn't give this title any constraints. It doesn't have constraints. That's why it's fighting right now. So not only do you have to tell it in position here, you also have to give that constraints unless you group it. And if I give this constraints, and now let's test it. It should be in position now. Oh, it is. Oh, now I'm missing my image. Okay, now I have a little bit. Believe me, the auto layout is really difficult. I lost my photo now. How did I lose my photo? My photo. Maybe I should put this back to normal. Here's another problem with using this program is once you add some constraints, if you go and try and add new constraints, it's going to add actually new constraints. And so you start building things on top of each other. It causes problems. So the easiest way to adjust it is you can actually click on the little numbers here, and you can say, if you notice, if I click here and click here, you'll see the little numbers for the constraints. You'll see them down there. And you'll notice there's like a little pop-up window right there for all your constraints. You can see them in here. And so they're all being, programmed there. It's telling you where they're at. And so you can go and change the numbers and so on by double-clicking on there. And right now we put 0 in there, didn't we, right? Remember we put 0 in there? So instead of 0, if I want, I can put 18, I think is what it was supposed to be. And then now it's giving me an error message on that on both sides. Now it's correct. So it wanted me to change both sides. So maybe that fixed my picture being missing. So if I test this now, it should hopefully show my picture again. No, my picture's gone. I'll have to think about that. I don't know why my picture's gone. Why is my picture gone? Well, you get an idea of how you can build. This is going to be the hardest thing. The programming is quite easy, I think. I'm sure if you did any HTML or any concepts, the programming's not that hard. If you want to try some of the things from the book, we're gonna the first couple weeks of the class, we're gonna be doing the flashlight one, and then oh, where am I at here? Not that. What am I looking for? Where's the book at? Oh, here it is. Again, remember this is a book here. There's some nice lessons in here. I don't know why usually in this version I get little arrows. So oh, there they are. You can go through. Again, this book talks about the storyboard and how to build. You can see the visual interface right here. You can zoom in a little bit and see it. And then they talk about it here. So again, this is how you build your application. You have a master view controller. And remember the stacks talk, or the poker, or the basic cards? You have one controller here, and then these are replaced. And remember I told you, like in the new version, notice how the top navigation control has a little box at the top. You see that? So they're differentiating between the safe area and the top bar in this new version. See, somewhat. I think there's a little bar there. I don't know. There's like there's some new things in here as far as the new version with this thing called the safe area. See how it's lighter gray and darker gray here? There's like a new way of doing that. Yeah. So this is good to go through this right here. And then we'll do a lot of this programming. Some of it we'll do together. Some of it you'll have to do on your own. Like I said, the first week we'll be doing this one right here where it says Guided Project, the light. Very easy programming. You get a button and you push the button, it changes the background color. You could do this probably in about 15 minutes right here. But there's some nice concepts in here. And then, so we'll do this probably the first week right here. And then, and the nice thing about this book is it makes a combination of programming and some layout things. Yeah, a little bit. It's not very good at layout. I'm gonna have some other lessons to teach you how to do the layout. I struggle, as you can see already, still with. I lost my photo, right? I was like, "Where's my photo go?" Then you have to troubleshoot, and you can figure it out eventually. But yeah, okay. Let me stop.